All right, so last time we left off talking about hormones, specifically somatotropin, which is a normally occurring protein hormone. Hormones are chemical messengers that are transported in the blood to affect body processes like metabolism and reproduction. Hormones can be broadly divided into two types, protein hormones and steroid hormones. The protein hormones include somatotropin and insulin, and when these are consumed orally, they are digested like other proteins and rendered inactive in your body. So, this fact was first confirmed for somatotropin in laboratory rats, fed large quantities of bovine somatotropin, or BST. Just as diabetics must receive insulin injections for this protein hormone to be biologically active, cows have to receive injections of recombinant bovine somatotropin for it to be. So bovine somatotropin, also known as bovine growth hormone or BGH, is a protein hormone produced by the pituitary gland of cows. There are 20 amino acids that comprise the structure of all proteins, and each specific protein has a unique sequence of amino acids, similar to the use of letters in the alphabet to spell a word. So these 20 amino acids are combined in specific sequences to form the individual proteins that comprise all life, plants and animals. Typically in a day, we would consume over 50,000 different proteins from plant and animal source foods, totally normal. When consumed, so let's compare recombinant bovine somatotropin to bovine somatotropin. So bovine somatotropin, or BST, is naturally made in the cow's pituitary gland. Your pituitary gland is deep in your brain, same thing in a cow, and it signals milk production for the cattle. Ours is in charge of a variety of hormone functions, but we're not going to go there. So for the cows, the pituitary gland uses bovine somatotropin to signal milk production. Recombinant bovine somatotropin, or RBST, is man-made and injected in dairy cattle to signal milk production to continue once the natural lactation period in cows has passed. So this allows for longer milking in dairy production. Milk will naturally contain small amounts of bovine somatotropin. This means that we cannot really label milk as BST-free because it is naturally produced by the cow and thus naturally occurring in milk. So when you see milk labeled as BST-free, know that that's a marketing ploy and a hoax and absolutely ridiculous. So somatotropin has been the subject of specific scientific studies for over 50 years. And so there's an extensive base of knowledge about its biology. In particular, in the 1950s, we thought maybe we can use bovine somatotropin to induce growth in humans afflicted with dwarfism. We thought that maybe this growth hormone could be used to assist us in growing if we suffered from dwarfism. So these studies proved that although there were no negative side effects, humans do not respond to bovine somatotropin at all. There were many considerations in the evaluation of the human safety of milk from RBST supplemented cows. Major reasons for the conclusion that the milk was safe for humans included RBST is a protein, and when consumed orally, it is digested, just as occurs for all dietary proteins. If you consume proteins all day long and they're just digested and rendered inactive, that's what happens with this one. BST is not biologically active in humans, even if injected directly into the bloodstream. So again, it's developed for a different species, so it does nothing for us. It's like chlorophyll in plants does things for plants, but we are not a plant, so it does nothing for us. Okay, so BST is the same kind of concept. It's developed for cows and it does nothing for humans. Milk from RBST supplemented cows does not differ in composition from milk produced by unsupplemented cows. We have studied that to death. So, Let's also talk about antibiotics in milk. All milk is tested for antibiotics, and none with antibiotic residues is allowed to enter the food chain. Absolutely zero milk enters the food chain with antibiotic residues. The antibiotic testing occurs for samples of each milk load from individual farms, and additional tests occur at several points during the milk journey from farm to market. If antibiotic residues are detected, the milk is discarded and the producer receives a severe penalty. The United States Department of Agriculture analyzes foods, including retail milk and dairy products, for pesticide residues using the tests and standards by the Environmental Protection Agency. The results are posted on the USDA website. Results verify the rarity of violations. So you can imagine, as a producer, you would not want to be publicly shamed in this way. Not only would you be pouring out milk that you are no longer receiving payment for, but then you would be shamed on the United States Department of Agriculture website. So this doesn't happen, folks. When we do have a violation, the milk is poured down the drain. Moral of the story is this topic receives so much worry in blogs and in in TV specials, and it drives me crazy because there's nothing to worry about here. It's like making a mountain out of a molehill. It just drives me crazy that this is even something that's still marketed against. You know, you see people actually marketing milk as antibiotic free and BST free when obviously neither of those marketing schemes are actually doing the public justice, because all milk has a little bit of BST in it, but again, it's a protein, so it doesn't bother you. It's rendered inactive in your body. And antibiotics aren't allowed in milk, and it's poured out if they're found to have it, and it gets tested multiple points along the way. If you want to see who has violated that and who's had to dump their milk out, go to the USDA website and check it out. All right, pasteurization. Most milk is pasteurized, which means it's heated to a high temperature to kill most of the bacteria that can cause food poisoning or milk spoilage. Pasteurized milk has a shelf life of 2 to 3 weeks, much longer than non-pasteurized milk. Ultra-pasteurized milk, which is a higher temperature treatment, has a shelf life of 2 to 3 months. Veal. So female beef and dairy calves are usually kept within the herd. Male calves generally become veal. I'm not a big fan of veal. This is a part of the dairy industry I don't like. However, I'm going to leave you to come up with your own thoughts on the matter. So, veal calves are fed an iron deficient milk replacer and raised and confined to crates to minimize their movements. Meat that is produced using this method is shown here on the left. It's much more pale in color. Supposedly, it's really, really, really tender and delicious. I've never eaten veal, but you can see the comparison to a normally fed out steer on the right. So meat produced from veal calves has more pale color as the muscle tissue is anemic. So let's talk about breeds of cattle. The first at the top is a really popular breed of cattle, Holstein. They are renowned for their milk production quantity. They can produce, I want to say, like 32 gallons of milk a day or something crazy. Jersey cattle, the one in the middle, are really known for their high butter fat content in their milk, on average about 5.4% butter fat, about 3 times that of the other breeds. They're super sweet and adorable. And the Guernsey breed is shown on the bottom. Now there's other dairy breeds outside of this, but these are the 3 most popular, so I highlighted them. You're probably most familiar with Holsteins because they're the most popular. Does anybody have any questions on dairy? All right. So chickens. Um, the domestic chicken comes from the red jungle fowl, which is native to India and much of Asia. There are two main types of domesticated chickens. Laying hens have been bred for high levels of egg production, around 250 a year. Broiler hens have been bred to grow large and quickly. So generally speaking, laying hens are bred for their egg production, and broiler hens are bred to become meat birds. So laying hens, the vast majority of hens that supply eggs, over 90%, are raised in rows and columns of small identical battery cages. So this is the concentrated animal feeding operation set up for poultry. Female chicks are placed in the cages in groups of 4, and they spend their entire lives there. Each hen gets a space about the size of an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. All feeding and egg collection is automated. You can see there at the base of where their heads are, there is a bin of food that rotates, and at the top of the cage, there's a pipe with little red nipples, and that's where they get their water from. The eggs roll out of the cage down onto the conveyor belt, where they're taken daily for cleaning and packing. Light levels are kept near constant, at least 17 hours a day, to keep them laying year round, because during this time of year, especially daylight savings time, when it starts getting darker earlier and we lose hours of daylight, um, chickens will naturally stop laying to conserve energy for winter. So in these concentrated facilities, since they're not exposed to extreme heat or cold, they're kept at a near constant temperature. They keep light levels at a near constant to ensure that they're producing eggs normally throughout the year. So some things that you need to know about chickens. Chickens are jerks. Chicken cannibalism is very common. The restricted space in battery cages leads to an unusual amount of aggression among the hens. So to prevent injuries, chicks are debeaked and declawed so they don't basically eat each other. You can see here on the right an image of a hen who has been attacked repeatedly, and you can see a picture on the bottom of a debeaked hen. Broiler hens have much larger thighs and breasts than other breeds of chickens. They reach their full harvest weight in just 2 months, so they grow like crazy fast. Broiler chickens are raised in pens instead of cages to prevent bruising of the meat. So we're going to watch a quick video about this. All right, so we're going to go over the breeds of chickens that are the most popular. There are so many breeds of chickens, folks. So we're just going to go over a few of them. The really popular ones that are used for layers are Rhode Island Reds. They're a very small bird. Well, I'll say medium-sized bird. I consider them small. Um, they lay consistently, and one of the most prolific layers available. Leghorns are the white birds. You guys are probably too old to remember the cartoon Foghorn Leghorn, but or too young to remember. There's also a breed of chicken called Sussex. They're used for laying broiler chickens. We've got our Cornish crosses. They're the most popular for meat birds, followed by, oh, please just function computer. Um, so we're gonna transfer into our pigs unit. Before we get started on pigs, do you have any fun questions for chickens? You're probably used to the ones that you've seen at like Rural King. So some of the really popular chicken breeds for at-home uses are Oricanas or Americanas. It's basically the same breed. Um, They're also known as Easter eggers because they lay all kinds of fun colors. They can have blue eggs, green eggs, pink eggs, brown eggs. And then if you cross them with um, a copper Moran, then they'll lay olive green eggs. And so we call those olive eggers. So some fun facts for you. There's also really, really tiny bantam chickens. There's chickens of every shape and size for the show circuit and personal usage. They're really fun. We have Oricon as an olive eggers, and our rooster is a copper Moran. So next year I plan to breed them and make more olive eggers to sell for home use. So anyways, pigs. So pigs were domesticated from wild boars, which are native across Europe, Asia, and northern Africa. Adult males live alone, while females and offspring travel in large groups. They're very destructive where I'm from. Wild boars are, you can actually get permits to hunt them because they're so destructive and overpopulated. They'll take out an entire field of hay, they'll take out an entire barn full of hay. It's pretty wild how destructive they are in California. Pig hunts are really fun, but they're also terrifying because they can move really fast and they're really, really mean and they are not tiny. Um, so boars are omnivores, feeding on mostly plant matter, but also insects, worms, eggs, and even small mammals. So domesticated pigs, especially pink-skinned ones, are very sensitive to sunburn and heat stress. So they're raised indoors in temperature-controlled batch pens. Their tails are often cut off at birth to prevent biting because they will attack each other and they will bite each other, and the easiest nub for them to chew on is each other's tail. So we prevent a lot of carnage by cutting their tail. Okay, so these are the videos that I'm going to post as links underneath the posting for this PowerPoint, so you'll get to see them individually. They're about 7 minutes. Um, so swine production. Pigs cannot deal with climate stress at all, so they grow best and have less mortality in climate-controlled buildings. Um, for flooring and penning, pigs are extremely destructive by nature. They root in the ground for grubs and roots and stuff. So if you don't have concrete flooring, they will root up your flooring. So most floors are either slatted or concrete because of this. Breeding. So some popular breeds are the red Duroc shown in the top left. They have droopy ears. They're very cute. My favorite are the Hampshire pigs. They look like an Oreo cookie. They're black with a white belt around their shoulders, and they also have erect ears. Spotted pigs shown in the bottom left. They kind of look like a Holstein cow. Bottom right are the Yorkshires. They're what you probably see the most often. They're solid white with erect ears. We also have Chester Whites, Landrace, the Yorkshire again, the Spotted Pig shown again, the Duroc shown again, and then Berkshire Pigs shown in the bottom right. They're kind of fun because they have the four white socks, little white on their face. They kind of look like they're wearing a tuxedo. So pretty much all pigs are bred for meat. We don't milk pigs. We don't really use them for other purposes. We don't use them for wool, that's for sure. They don't have hair. Well, they do, but it's very coarse and it's a very, very, very thin abnormal layer. So there's different types of pig operations. There's a farrow to finish operation where we have breeding and farrowing sows and feeding offspring until they reach market weight of about 280 pounds. This is about a 10-month operation. We have farrow to feeder operations where we're breeding and farrowing sows and then selling the piglets to finishing operations when they weigh between 60 and 90 pounds. Feeder to finish operations, buy feeder pigs weighing 30 to 60 pounds and then feed them to market weight. There's minimum overhead for feeder to finish, very low labor requirements, and no long-term commitments. So this tends to be a really popular money-making enterprise. It allows grain farmers to use homegrown feeds to finish pigs without having to manage breeding livestock. Do you have any questions on pigs? Well, we're going to go over the more sustainable options for all these animals once we get through the basic um, portion of this unit. Piglets are like the cutest things ever. All right, sheep. Domesticated sheep come from the mouflon, which was domesticated and then through artificial selection, the sheep industry with various breeds was created for various purposes. We use sheep for lamb, wool, and dairy products. I actually have a really good friend in California who raises dairy sheep for ice cream and has a really successful creamery that has gotten really popular and been featured in several magazines. She makes really good ice cream. So here you can see the mouflon most sheep came from. So dual purpose breeds are highly valued in the sheep industry. And by dual purpose, we mean a breed that can be used for more than one purpose, both wool and lamb or meat. Dairy is usually used to make cheese or ice cream. Most people don't drink sheep milk. It's usually utilized for some artesian purpose. Um, there's a common misconception that shearing a lamb is painful, but it's not. Shearing lambs is not painful. It's the same as you getting a haircut. Lambs may be shorn without causing them any pain. So the breeds that are most commonly used for their wool is the merino sheep. These are highly valued for their coat because it is such a soft fiber. The Leicester breed is definitely utilized for their wool. You can see them in the middle there. And the Lincoln sheep again shown there. The breeds used for lamb or meat purposes include the Dorset, the Dorper, the Hampshire, and the Suffolk. The ones that you most often see in like 4-H or FFA show rings are the Hampshires or the Suffolks because um, of their build and overall quality. For dairy purposes, we have East Friesians and the Lacans. So East Friesians are the really popular ones. They're very hardy and they produce a really creamy, rich milk. We can also utilize the Awasi, which is another really long-haired sheep that can be used for their wool. Um, Same thing with the East Friesians. They get a pretty. So we're gonna talk about some rogue sheep. Okay, so it is normal for a sheep to get shorn between once and twice a year for commercial purposes. So here you can see why this is important. Okay, we've domesticated sheep and we've bred them to produce more wool than they would normally. Okay, so shearing them becomes an important part of their upkeep. Otherwise, they get really heavily weighted down by their wool. You can see here on the left we have a sheep that has somehow evaded being shorn for 2 years, and we have one that has been shaven and their wool is growing back at a normal rate on the right. So you can obviously see that the one that hasn't been shorn is probably not very comfortable. They're carrying, quite a hefty poundage there in wool, and that would be extremely uncomfortable, especially during summer months. So we're going to talk about fugitive sheep. First, we're going to talk about Sheila, then we'll talk about Shrek. All right, so Sheila. Sheila was a fugitive sheep that went a decent amount of time. Okay, they were lost for basically 6 years, and somehow survived um, carrying around this massive, massive amount of wool. And so, I mean, look, you could barely see this poor sheep's body. Do you see her legs? Like fugitive sheep. So this is, I share this with you to highlight both the hilarity of Sheila and Shrek, but also the importance of shearing um, lambs that are grown for wool, especially because they they are this is not normal, okay? We have domesticated them to grow excessive amounts of wool, and it's frankly inhumane to leave it on them. So when you have fugitives like this, it really highlights why it's important to shear sheep. Um, they're not hurt by the process, and they're going to feel a lot lighter during summer without this much wool on them. And look at poor Shrek. Look at him. He's a mess. It just cracks me up every time I see these. Like he can't even see. That's probably why he was caught. All right, so the lamb industry. Lamb is used to define sheep meat from an animal that is less than 1 year old, while mutton is used to define meat from sheep 1 year old and older. Okay, so lamb has a milder flavor than mutton that is way more enjoyable. Okay, I can tell you right now, you are not going to enjoy mutton. I love lamb. I do not eat mutton. So in 2010, the United States produced approximately 163 million pounds of lamb and mutton. In the past, almost all lamb produced in the United States was sold in supermarkets and restaurants. In recent years, the non-traditional market has grown substantially, as well as lamb sales at farmers markets. Feeding or treating lambs with artificial hormones for growth promotion is not practiced in the United States. So if you see marketing gimmicks that say hormone free or anything like that on lamb, it's BS. They don't use them anyways. However, when they went, when men went off to war, what they were served in their little packs during World War II was mutton. So you've learned in world history about the world wars and how awful they were and how incredibly just mentally devastating they were to soldiers being in the trenches and watching their comrades die and just being surrounded by blood and gore and just misery. So as you can imagine, when they came home, um, anything that they associated with that experience had to go, right? Post-traumatic stress disorder is real, and anything that was associated with anything that they experienced there, such as eating mutton in the trenches, meant a decline for lamb sales in the United States. So the industry took a huge hit after World War II because nobody wanted to eat lamb anymore. Even though lamb and mutton are different, it still reminded people too much of the trenches, and the lamb industry took a huge hit. So, just an interesting fun fact for you about the lamb industry and the effect that the world wars had on it. So, guard animals used for sheep include llamas and different breeds of canine. The two most popular are Great Pyrenees and I'm sorry, but the second breed is escaping my brain right now. Whatever. I'll think of it and let you know sometime. But it looks just like the Great Pyrenees. They're really wonderful guardians. We have a Great Pyrenees for our animals. His name is King James the Floof, and he lives in the barn, and he's really, really, really good. They also use donkeys to guard flocks. They hate canines and they will kill them. So you cannot mix llamas or donkeys with dog guardian animals because the llamas and the donkeys will kill your guardian dogs because they naturally hate canines. Um, so you can have llamas and donkeys mixed together, but you cannot have a llama and a dog or a donkey and a dog mixed together. So we really want to get a donkey, but if we do that, of course, we'd have to keep it separate from King James the Floof so that King James the Floof doesn't get mauled to death. So what's interesting about these breeds is they instinctively guard the flock. Our dog was never trained. He naturally protects everybody. He naturally herds them into the barn if he sees an aerial predator, if he hears coyotes. We had a fox that came through our property for about 3 or 4 weeks, and he scared it off every time. It never once got any of our birds. So they instinctively do what they're bred to do. It's really incredible. Good genetics.